I've been saving all month for this. I think I need a root canal. I'm sure I need a long, slow root canal.
Now, no Novocaine. It dulls the senses.
What if the movie you loved, the one with the catchy songs and the quirky romance, ended with the entire cast being eaten and giant monsters destroying New York City? That's not a joke. That was the original $5 million ending to the 1986 musical classic, Little Shop of Horrors. It was filmed, it was finished, and it was a complete disaster. That one story is just a single leaf on one of the strangest plants in cinema history. The story of Little Shop of Horrors is really two stories. One is a legend of guerrilla filmmaking, a black and white comedy reportedly shot in just 2 days on a shoestring budget. The other is a massive $25 million Hollywood blockbuster that battled complex puppets, furious test audiences, and the ghost of its own weird legacy. Today on Golden Flicker, we're counting down the 10 most curious facts about both versions of Little Shop of Horrors. We'll dig up the truth behind the 1960 film's impossible production and expose the multi-million-dollar secrets of the 1986 remake. This is a story that starts on Skid Row and ends with a global invasion. Do you remember the first time you heard that plant sing, "Feed Me"? You may have seen the film, or the musical, or the remake, but you've never heard the full story, until now. Here are 10 things you didn't know about Little Shop of Horrors.
Blood? You like blood? Oh, you must be kidding.
Number 10. The Recycled Miracle. To understand the 1960 original, you have to understand one man, Roger Corman. Corman wasn't just a director, he was a filmmaking machine, the undisputed king of the low-budget B-movie. His motto was simple: you can make a good film, or you can make a film quickly, or you can make a film cheaply, but you can't make a good film quickly and cheaply. And then he spent his entire career trying to prove himself wrong. In 1959, Corman had just finished a film called A Bucket of Blood, a dark comedy about a busboy who becomes an art world sensation by covering his murder victims in clay. The film was a modest hit, but more importantly, its sets were still standing at the Chaplin Studios in Hollywood. They were scheduled to be torn down. For any other producer, this was just the end of a production. For Roger Corman, it was an opportunity. He saw those leftover sets, a coffee shop, an alley, an office, and he saw his next movie. He reportedly made a bet that he could shoot an entire feature film on those sets before the demolition crew arrived. He approached his regular screenwriter, Charles B. Griffith, with a challenge: write a script that uses these specific sets, and write it fast. Griffith, who had also written A Bucket of Blood, pitched a few ideas. One was a vampire detective parody, another was about a chef who secretly cooked his customers into soup stock. But those were rejected, partly due to content restrictions of the time. Finally, Griffith landed on an idea inspired by a couple of sci-fi short stories, including one about a man-eating plant. Corman loved it. It was contained, it was weird, and most of all, it could be filmed on those sets. The florist shop, Gravis Mushnick's, was just the redressed set of the Beatnik coffee shop from A Bucket of Blood. This decision to recycle sets wasn't just a fun fact, it was the entire reason the 1960 Little Shop of Horrors exists at all. It was born from pure, unadulterated thrift. And that thrift would define every single second of its legendary production. Number 9. The Vampire Chef Who Became a Plant. So the sets were in place, but what about the story? Charles B. Griffith's original concept was a wild ride. Before settling on the man-eating plant, his rejected ideas tell you everything you need to know about the kind of movies Corman's team was making. The vampire detective idea was quickly shelved. The cannibal chef idea, titled The Passionate People Eater, was a favorite for a while, but Corman was worried it would face censorship. The story goes that they settled on the man-eating plant because it was somehow less grotesque. You could show a plant eating someone in 1960 with less trouble than showing a human cooking them. Griffith was inspired by a 1956 sci-fi story by Arthur C. Clarke called The Reluctant Orchid, about a shy little plant that turns out to be carnivorous. He also drew from a 1905 H.G. Wells story, The Flowering of the Strange Orchid. But Griffith's version added the comedy. He invented the hypochondriac mother, the sadistic dentist, and the flower-eating customer. He also, crucially, invented the voice of the plant. In the 1960 film, the plant, named Audrey Jr., has only a few simple lines, most famously, "Feed me." That gravelly, demanding voice wasn't a famous actor. It wasn't even an actor at all. It was Charles B. Griffith, the screenwriter, doing a funny voice into a microphone. Early drafts of his script even gave the plant the name Oriole Bloom. This complete lack of pretension is what makes the 1960 film so charming. The entire concept was reverse engineered. It wasn't, "I have a great story, let me find the money." It was, "I have some free sets, let me invent a story that fits them." It's a perfect example of how limitations, far from killing creativity, can sometimes be the only reason it exists.
Feed me!
Number 8. The star who turned down Seymour. Roger Corman had what was known as a stock company, a group of young, loyal actors he used again and again in his pictures. This group included Jonathan Hayes, Jackie Joseph, and a charismatic character actor named Dick Miller. Miller was the star of Corman's previous film, A Bucket of Blood, playing the lead role of Walter Paisley. He was a Corman favorite. When Little Shop was being cast, Corman naturally offered the lead role of Seymour Krelboyne to his most recent star, Dick Miller. And Miller said no. He turned it down, thinking the character of Seymour, a nerdy accidental killer who becomes famous for his art, was just too similar to Walter Paisley, the nerdy accidental killer he had just played. Miller didn't want to be typecast. Instead, he opted for a much smaller, but arguably just as memorable supporting role, Burson Fooch, the customer who comes into the shop to buy flowers to eat. The role of Seymour instead went to Jonathan Hayes, another Corman regular who brought a frantic, nervous energy to the part. But Miller's choice gave the film one of its strangest scenes. As Burson Fooch, Miller happily munches on the flowers, and according to legend, he was actually eating real flowers on camera. It's a bizarre, hilarious non sequitur that perfectly captures the film's absurd tone. Miller's choice illustrates the casual, collaborative, and slightly unhinged atmosphere of a Corman set. He would go on to become one of the most beloved character actors in cinema, famous for his roles in Gremlins and The Terminator. But he's the man who could have been Seymour. Number 7. The Tale of Two Audreys. The heart of Little Shop of Horrors, in both versions, is the tragic romance between Seymour and Audrey. But the two Audreys themselves could not be more different. In the 1960 film, Audrey Fulkerd is played by Jackie Joseph. She's quirky, she's funny, and she has a distinct squeaky voice. She's a B-movie heroine, a good-natured sidekick to Seymour's antics. She's part of the joke, but the character, as written, is relatively thin. Her main problem is that Seymour is too shy to ask her out. Then, in 1982, the story was transformed into an off-Broadway musical by two young geniuses named Howard Ashman and Alan Menken. They saw the 1960 film and realized it wasn't just a campy joke, it was a Faustian tragedy. They rewrote the story, deepening the characters and giving them a powerful emotional core. And their greatest reinvention was Audrey. The musical's Audrey is no longer just a quirky sidekick. She is the soul of the show. She's a tragic, vulnerable woman trapped in an abusive relationship who dreams of a simple, suburban life, somewhere that's green. The actress who originated that role on stage, who defined every note and every nuance of that iconic character, was Ellen Greene. When Frank Oz set out to make the 1986 film, there was pressure to cast a big movie star. But for Oz and for the producers, there was only one choice. Ellen Greene was Audrey. She was cast to reprise her star-making stage role, a rare and brilliant move. This transition is key to the story's legacy. Jackie Joseph's original Audrey is a perfect fit for Corman's quirky B-movie. But Ellen Greene's portrayal defined the character for millions, first on stage and then forever on film, bringing a heartbreaking depth and a powerhouse voice that elevates the 1986 version from a simple remake to a timeless musical. Number 6. The Dentist versus the Sadist. In the 1960 original, the dentist sequence is a short, bizarre, and darkly comic scene. Seymour, suffering from a toothache, visits the office of Dr. Phoebus Farb. The dentist is a bit rough, but the real joke of the scene is his patient, a man who actively, joyfully loves pain. This character, Wilberforce, is in the movie for only a couple of minutes, but he steals the entire film. And the actor who played him, well, his story is so big we're saving it for later. In the 1986 remake, Frank Oz and Howard Ashman took this small, strange scene and exploded it into a full-blown, show-stopping musical number. First, they reinvented the dentist. He's no longer Dr. Farb, he's Orrin Scrivello, DDS. And he's not just a rough dentist. He's a black leather-clad, motorcycle-riding, nitrous oxide-huffing sadist who became a dentist specifically because it allowed him to inflict pain legally. He's also Audrey's abusive boyfriend. To play this cartoonishly evil character, they cast one of the biggest comedy stars on the planet, Steve Martin. Martin's performance is a masterpiece of manic energy, a comedic supernova that burns itself out in one of the film's most memorable songs, Dentist. But they still needed the masochistic patient. For this small cameo, they cast another comedy legend, Bill Murray. Murray plays Arthur Denton, a man who walks in asking for a long, slow root canal, and is positively gleeful at the prospect of Martin's medieval tortures. The scene he shares with Steve Martin is a duel of comedic titans. But the story behind Murray's casting is pure Hollywood drama. Producer David Geffen reportedly cast Murray for the part without telling director Frank Oz. Oz was furious, not because he didn't like Murray, but because he and Geffen had an agreement that they would both have to sign off on every casting choice. It created real tension on set. Oz, who had another actor in mind, had to smooth things over with Geffen. In the end, of course, Murray was perfect. His deadpan delivery, "Oh, the candy bars, they're my favorite," is the perfect counterpoint to Martin's manic sadism, creating a scene that is infinitely more famous and funny than the original that inspired it. Number 5. The Voice of the Plant. We've already mentioned that the 1960 Plant's voice was just the screenwriter, Charles Griffith, doing a funny voice. It's lo-fi, it's cheap, and it's perfectly in tune with the film's B-movie charm. For the 1986 musical, the Plant, now named Audrey II, was the star. It wasn't just a prop, it was a character. It had to sing. It had to sing blues, R&B, and soul. It had to be charming, manipulative, and terrifying all at once. The voice of Audrey II was one of the most important casting decisions in the entire film. The production auditioned dozens of actors and singers, but the creative team landed on a choice that was, in hindsight, sheer genius. They cast Levi Stubbs. If you don't know the name, you know the voice. Levi Stubbs was the legendary, powerful lead singer of the Motown supergroup, the Four Tops. He was the voice behind classics like I Can't Help Myself, Sugar Pie Honey Buns, and Reach Out, I'll Be There. Stubbs brought a soulful, charismatic menace to the role that no actor could have faked. He wasn't just a monster voice, he was a world-class singer. When his voice booms, it's not a request, it's a gospel command. His performance of the climactic song, Mean Green Mother from Outer Space, the one original song written just for the film, is an astonishing vocal performance that rightfully earned the movie an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Song. The contrast is staggering. The 1960 film had its writer goofing off in a sound booth. The 1986 film had one of the greatest singers of the 20th century. It's a perfect illustration of how the remake took the quirky DNA of the original and amplified it into a spectacular, big-budget masterpiece. And now, the golden flicker moment. Number 4, The Lost Apocalypse. This is it, the single greatest what-if story in 1980 cinema. This is the story of the $5 million ending that was so horrifying, the studio refused to release it. As we mentioned, the 1986 film released in theaters has a happy ending. Seymour pulls Audrey from the plant's jaws, he electrocutes Audrey second, and the two of them escape Skid Row to live happily ever after in their dream suburban home. It's sweet, it's satisfying, and it is a complete and total betrayal of the original story. The 1960 film ends with Audrey Jr. blooming, revealing the faces of all its victims, Seymour included, in its flowers. The final line is,
"I've had so many dinners."
It's a dark, weird punchline. The stage musical's ending is even darker. Audrey II kills Audrey. It kills Seymour. And then, victorious, it buds and spreads, taking over the entire world in a plant-based apocalypse. Director Frank Oz, a man of integrity, was faithful to the musical. He filmed this ending, and he didn't do it halfway. He created a 23-minute, $5 million epic sequence. It showed Audrey dying in Seymour's arms, singing a heartbreaking reprise of Somewhere That's Green. It showed Seymour, in a fit of rage, climbing into the plant's mouth to kill it, only to be eaten himself. And then it got bigger. The plants multiplied. We see them smashing through buildings, tearing down bridges, and battling the military. In a truly spectacular finale, a giant Audrey II tears through a movie screen, topples the Statue of Liberty, and laughs maniacally as it conquers the planet. It was one of the most expensive and complex special effects sequences of its time, and test audiences hated it. They loved the movie. The songs, the comedy, Rick Moranis, Ellen Greene, they were cheering. And then, the two characters they had fallen in love with were brutally murdered and the world ended. Director Frank Oz recalled that the theater became a refrigerator, an icebox. The audience was silent. The recommend cards, which needed to be at 55% for the studio to be happy, came back at 13%. The studio, Warner Brothers, panicked. They told Oz and Geffen, "You can't release this." The entire 23-minute, $5 million ending was scrapped. The team was forced to go back, rewrite, and reshoot a new, happy ending from scratch. For decades, this apocalypse ending was the holy grail for film fans, existing only in grainy black and white work prints. It wasn't until 2012 that the original, fully restored, full-color ending was finally released on the director's cut Blu-ray. It's a spectacular, jaw-dropping piece of filmmaking and a fascinating look at the brutal battle between an artist's vision and an audience's demands. This is without a doubt the golden flicker moment. Do you agree? Number 3, The Puppetry Problem. That $5 million ending wasn't just expensive because of the destruction, it was expensive because of the puppets. The 1960 film's Audrey Jr. was a simple, cheap prop. It was a couple of hand puppets for the small versions, and for the large version, it was a static model that actors would manually move between takes, or they would simply reverse the footage of it spitting something out to make it look like it was eating. For the 1986 film, Frank Oz, a master puppeteer himself and the man behind Miss Piggy and Yoda, demanded the most realistic, expressive, and terrifying plant puppet ever created. He turned to Jim Henson's Creature Shop. What they built was revolutionary. They built 6 different stages of the plant, from the small pod to the massive 12-foot-tall mean green mother that took up the entire set. This final plant was a marvel of animatronics, hydraulics, and cables, requiring a team of up to 60 puppeteers to operate. But this created a massive technical problem. How do you make a 12-foot mechanical puppet lip sync in real time to the complex, rapid-fire R&B vocals of Levi Stubbs? The answer was, you don't. The engineering couldn't keep up. The puppet's jaws simply couldn't move that fast. So the special effects team, led by Lyle Conway, came up with an ingenious and agonizing solution. They filmed the puppet at a slower speed. All of the plant's major musical numbers were filmed at 16 frames per second instead of the standard 24. This meant that when played back at normal speed, the puppet appeared to be moving 50% faster, making its lip sync look sharp and believable. But this created a new problem. Everything else in the shot would also be sped up. So Rick Moranis and any other actor in the scene with the plant had to perform his role in 1.5x slow motion. Think about that. Moranis had to act, sing, and move at a snail's pace, all while being battered by a giant 2,000-pound puppet just to make the final shot look normal. It was physically and mentally exhausting. It's one of the great unsung technical achievements in acting. Moranis isn't just acting, he's performing a complex slow-motion ballet with a multi-ton monster. Number 2. The weird stuff that launched a star. Let's go back to that dentist's office in 1960. The scene-stealing masochist, Wilberforce, was played by a 23-year-old completely unknown actor. His name was Jack Nicholson. This was one of Nicholson's very first film roles. He was a student in an acting class, and Roger Corman had seen him in a play. According to Corman, he had originally not wanted him for the part. Nicholson, sensing this, knew he had one chance to make an impression. He later recalled, "I went into the shoot knowing I had to be very quirky because Roger originally hadn't wanted me. In other words, I couldn't play it straight. So I just did a lot of weird stuff that I thought would make it funny." A lot of weird stuff is an understatement. Nicholson's performance is completely unhinged. He improvised most of his manic dialogue, including his high-pitched nasal voice and his ecstatic yelps of pain, oh pain.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
His energy is so bizarre and so magnetic that he hijacks the entire movie for the 2 minutes he's on screen. There's another famous story from that day. Corman's extreme thrift extended to props. The dental drill was a real prop borrowed from Corman's actual dentist. During one of Nicholson's wild takes, he accidentally knocked over the drill, and Corman supposedly cut the take early, more worried about the prop than the performance. That cameo became a cult film legend. For years, as Nicholson became the biggest movie star in the world, re-releases of The Little Shop of Horrors would misleadingly feature his face prominently on the poster, tricking audiences into thinking he was the star. It was a tiny role born from an unknown actor's desperate need to stand out, and it became one of the first flashes of the unpredictable and dangerous genius that would define Jack Nicholson's entire career. Number 1. The Two-Day Miracle. We've talked about the recycled sets, the B-movie actors, and the shoestring budget. But the number 1 most important and most legendary fact about the 1960 The Little Shop of Horrors is the speed at which it was filmed. 2 days. That is the legend. 2 days and 1 night. Roger Corman, wanting to use the bucket of blood sets, and more importantly, wanting to beat a new Screen Actors Guild rule about residual payments that was taking effect on January 1, 1960, decided to shoot the entire film before the deadline. This was not a normal production. This was filmmaking as a commando raid. To prepare, Corman had his actors rehearse for 3 solid days, treating the script like a stage play. When it was time to film, everyone knew their lines, their marks, and their blocking perfectly. There was no time for mistakes. To capture all the footage he needed, Corman didn't shoot with the standard single camera setup. He filmed with 2 and sometimes 3 cameras at once, a technique common in live television and sitcoms, but highly unusual for a feature film. This allowed him to get his wide shots and close-ups simultaneously, slashing his editing time. The entire principal photography for the interior scenes was completed in 2 days, 1 night, at the end of December 1959. The total budget is estimated to have been between $22,500 and $28,000. In 2024 money, that's less than $300,000. The 1986 remake cost almost 100 times that. The frantic pace led to happy accidents. A famous anecdote claims an editor made a bad cut, and to cover it, they randomly inserted a shot of the moon. Decades later, film critics would write essays overanalyzing the symbolism of the moon shot, which amused the filmmakers to no end. This 2-day miracle is more than just trivia. It is a testament to the power of creative will. Roger Corman, with nothing but leftover sets, a handful of actors, and an impossible deadline, created one of the most enduring cult classics of all time. From a $28,000 B-movie bet to a $25 million musical spectacular, the legacy of Little Shop of Horrors is one of the most unique in all of cinema. It's a story that proves that creativity can thrive, whether you have 2 days or 2 years, whether your budget is nothing or everything. All it takes is a good idea, a little bit of nerve, and a whole lot of blood. If you discovered something new today, illuminate our day by clicking like and subscribe to Golden Flicker so you never miss a story from the annals of cinema history. Which film should we explore next? Let us know in the comments.